So the first thing we have to understand about Zugos is that the Rambam and the Meiri hold the whole Gemara is silly. They hold that there's no such thing as Zugos, but makes no difference if you do things in pairs. Really, and all the Chacham were doing was that they had to cater to the superstitions which were prevalent in Bavel, because otherwise people would not listen to them. So it's like a famous story named about Rabbi Yitzchak Elchanan Spector. Yitzchak Elchanan Spector was a great posek in Lithuania in the 1800s. The person who invented the color, the tcheles for the tzitzis in the 1800s, the Radzina Rebbe, we now believe was wrong about his choice for where the tcheles comes from, but he came to ask Rabbi Yitzchak Elchanan to put on his tcheles, on his tzitzis. Rabbi Yitzchak Elchanan said, I can't, even if the tcheles is the right tcheles, because people will think I'm weird. And people think I'm weird, they're not going to come to me for psak halacha, or they're not going to respect my psak halacha as much. And he was the greatest posek in Lithuania. So if we felt for public policy reasons, he cannot put on tcheles. Here it's a similar idea. In other words, because superstition was so entrenched in Bavel, so therefore they could not say that it's all nonsense. They had to deal with it according to the level where people are. And the Rambam here would believe the same thing about astrology. Even though we find in Chazal that they seemed to believe in astrology, no, it was not actually that they believed in astrology. They were catering to the beliefs of the people at the time. Yes?
But are you implying that Yitzchak Elchanan thought that it was the actual thing?
I don't know what he thought. I think that he probably thought it's not the actual thing, but and he was just being nice.
But if you did, I don't see how you could say that.
What do you mean?
If you think it's...
You don't have a chiyuv to wear tcheles. What's the chiyuv to wear tcheles?
No, I'm not. No, I'm just... If he thought it was the real tcheles, then...
And what?
Isn't it different from the possible fulfillment of the mitzvah versus...
No.
Like
no.
Okay.
You seem shocked by that.
Not really. I'm just trying to understand the analogy.
Okay, fine. Oops. Yeah.
I would say two things. I wish I had the source to quote it from, but I know it was a very reputable source that actually says that all of the stars are actually living beings who have the ability to tap a little bit into the future.
No, so the Rambam says they're living beings. They're not living beings, but they're celestial, angelic beings. But he holds that has nothing to do with their being able to be used to foretell the future or not.
The Egyptian stargazers told Paro that according to a certain star, a person will arise, a male will arise and take out.
So according to Rambam, that's nonsense. Now let me clarify that. Almost every other Rishon, and certainly Achron, believes that astrology is probably true, and Shedim probably do exist, because Chazal seem to hold that they exist. It seems the preponderance of evidence is on the side that Chazal believed in them. Chazal believed in astrology, Shedim, etc. But the Rambam, by virtue of his having been the Rambam, his opinion, by definition, becomes a potential mainstream opinion, which is legitimate to maintain and to believe. You understand what I'm saying? In other words, if some third-rate rabbi had said astrology is stupid and Zugos don't exist, that would be one thing. We would have to disregard him and say, no, that's not. He's being heretical. Chazal clearly believe in it. But the Rambam was the Rambam, and he says that there are no Shedim. And he says astrology doesn't work. So nobody can say about the Rambam, well, he doesn't know what he's talking about. On the contrary, and this is my belief, I've expressed this, I don't know whether I've expressed this recently in some form or another, but I believe that HaKadosh Baruch Hu prevented the Rambam from having any access to Kabbalah or any access to esoteric wisdom in the sense of mystical traditions, in order that there always should be in Am Yisrael alternative, not to believe in these things, astrology and demons and such like.
Interesting.
What? Rambam. Yes, with a mem. Yeah.
I mean, I certainly.
The Ramban with a nun wasn't makubal.
I definitely believe that today we don't have any ability to, and we probably haven't in many, many years. Like all of those horoscope things you see are obviously not like nonsense.
Yes, but if you look at Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan's book, Immortality, Resurrection, the Age of the Universe, he has a whole chapter on astrology and horoscopes and how they work and how they could work. And he believes that they do work. He believes you're not allowed to foretell the future with them. He believes you're allowed to use them for psychological purposes. In other words, I can discover I have a friend who I've seen him do it. He can guess by knowing your personality which month and which week of the year you were born in, based on your personality, because every month has a different trait and every week has a different trait. Theoretically, every day of the week has a different trait. But there is
something to it. If he actually has that ability and it works, then...
No, I don't know. It's never been rigorously tested. We don't know that under scientific double-blind conditions. But I would tend to believe myself personally that there is something to it. I just started with the Rambam because the Rambam is an approach which one takes when one feels a Gemara is like Zugos is too uncomfortable. That's what you would do in order to deal with it. Now, Zugos themselves are obviously represent anything which is even as being bad. Anything which is odd seems to be good. Why? So the Maharal explains that any even number represents duality and separation. So, for example, there is the number 1 is complete unity and oneness. The number 2 already denotes separateness and being divided. And he says the word for 2 in Hebrew is shnayim, which comes from the word shoneh, different. So there can only be differences if there are 2. There's no difference if there's only 1. So 2 really doesn't mean 2. It means different, which automatically means 2. So the Maharal says 3 is already the 2 and something which unites them. He says he actually learns that, and I don't think this is necessarily geometrically the way we understand it today, but he says a line is made up of 3. In other words, you have 1 and 2 and the connection in the middle, which is the 3rd. So that is 3. 4, the Maharal says, represents the sides of a square. What unites them is the number 5, the middle of the square. And that's why we have lots of 5s, and certainly in Kabbalah and Judaism, like 5 parts of the Neshama and so on and so forth, because that unifies them.
What do you mean middle of the square?
What?
What do you mean?
A dot from which all parts of the square are accessible. Okay? So everything can be united through that dot. The 6 is a cube. 6 sides of a cube. So that is, again, different, not united. The 7th is the middle of the cube, which unites everything. So that's why we have 6 days of the week, plus Shabbos, 600,000 people, plus Torah, 6 words in Kriya Shema, plus the person who's saying, first person in Shema, plus the person who's saying them, and so on and so forth. 7 represents that unity, bringing the 6 plus the 1 together. 8 happens to be an exception. 8 is an even number, which is not considered to be a bad number, because 8 represents that which transcends nature, which so much goes beyond the cube. Right? Something beyond the cube. So something beyond the cube, that is something which is above nature, and that's why we have the 8 days of Hanukkah, the 8 days of Bris Milah, because it represents something transcendent. 9 is, even though it's an odd number, it's not considered to be a good number because it lacks perfection. It's one short of perfection. 10 is considered to be perfection. Again, even though it's an even number, but it's a perfect number because it's comprised of the two unities of 7 and 3. And that, in fact, is the way the spheros work. The spheros are the 3 upper spheros, Chachma, Bina, Das, triad, and then there's 7 lower spheros, right? Chesed, Gvur, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yisod, and Malchus. So that gives us those 2 levels of shleimus, perfect, which combine together to create 10, and 10 is considered to be a full completion, something which is a davar shalim. 11, in some systems, is in some ways looking at it as good, some ways looking at it as bad. There is this notion of 11 including, there's a song which for Shal Shuras, which most people don't sing, is Chazak, Kel Mistater, and then Chazak Mi'achek Echad, it says, Firosu Mafrit Aluf Lo Yireh Mo'aros. There's the 11th is the Sitra Achra, the other side. There's the 10 is the union and the 11 is the other side, and it's a negative thing. But then there's 11 can also represent, not most of the time not, but can also represent a full array of spheros in the sense that the 10 spheros include either only Keser or only Das. They don't include both. There are actually 11 spheros which appear in 10 as 10 in 2 different systems. So the 11 is possibly a good number, possibly a bad number, but the jury's out. 12 is not a good number, it's even, and it represents, actually, I was speaking about this in the middle school where I teach, and a girl pointed it out to me, why it's not considered to be a good number, because if you take all the surfaces of a cube and all the lines of a cube, you get 12. 6, the surface of the cube is 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the wait a minute, she's wrong. Yeah, it's how much is it actually? 14. Oh, she was wrong. Okay, so before
boxes themselves.
what? But it's 12. Since it's an even number, it also represents disunion, because, and I guess one has to figure out what it represents. But how in terms of the 3-dimensional array, but. I'm sure the Maharal speaks about that, I just don't recall offhand. But the 12 Shvatim, when they're separated, it's bad. They have to be united. And 13 represents the union of everything together. That's why we have Yud Gimel Midos, right? 13 Midos of Hashem. And we have also, what's the other 13? The 13 is, I think it's just coincidence, but the 13 Animamins, right? Which are the unit of Jewish faith. And of course, 13 is the gematria of?
Hashem.
No. It's half of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, but. Echad. Echad in gematria is 13. Right? Ahava in gematria is 13. So the unity and love are represented by the number 13. Now, just taking it a bit further, because we mentioned 14, obviously 14 is separate, disparate, things which are separate. David HaMelech is gematria, though, was 14, because he united all the different things, and he united them all by making the Sefer Tehillim, which has 150, at least the way Chazal edited it. There are probably more or less at some point, because there are obviously many authors, and it seems that some didn't make the cut, but there are 150 chapters in Tehillim nowadays, which probably represents something to do with 15. Also, the 15 is the Shem Hashem, Yud Hey, and the name Hashem represents unity. Again, the world, the unity of everything in this world. So one could go on in this vein, and the Maharal goes through a series of hundreds of numbers, giving the significance of the symbolism of each number, what it represents. But Zugos represent duality. That's the basic idea. Zugos represent otherness. There's no unity. And that's the danger of Zugos. That you have there is Reb Chaim Volozhner. if the Nefesh HaChaim says that if one is in danger, then one should focus on Eino Milvado, that there's no other force than Hashem. Did we speak about this last week?
Yes.
What?
Yes.
We did?
Yes.
Okay. So, yeah, we weren't here last week. Were you?
Yeah.
What? Anyway, maybe it's different. I don't know. So, and I just remember speaking about it recently. So, Eino Milvado means there's no other force in the world which has ultimate power except for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that power, that Eino Milvado, is something which to us represents the negation of all forces in this world, even forces of evil, in the sense that ultimately they go back to they are from the creation and under the supervision of our Kodesh Baruch Hu. And that's why the Gemara says if a person is confronted with witchcraft, sorcery, so then he has to focus on Eino Milvado. Because Eino Milvado means that there is no koyach to the witchcraft and the sorcery. Even the Gemara says, why is it called witchcraft? Why is it called sorcery? Because they're machishim pamal yoshamala. They can oppose the heavenly host. But that's only the heavenly host, not HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. So if a person is tapped into the power of Eino Milvado, even those forces of evil, which are so powerful that they go against, so to speak, the armies of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he's not subject to them. There's a story about the Brisker Rav, which I said this over? Did I say this over? No. The story about the Brisker Rav, which I don't know if it's true.
Train.
Yeah, on the train. When did I say it?
Last week.
Last week? Okay. So do you remember it?
No.
So I don't know what context I said it. So because you remember it and other people don't remember it. Anyway, so it doesn't matter. I'll say it again quickly. So the Brisker Rav, it's a quick story anyway. The Brisker Rav was riding on a train with his sons during the Second World War, and they were fleeing Warsaw. Eventually, they got to Eretz Yisrael, and the Nazis came on the train to check for papers. And the Brisker Rav said to his sons, "Focus on Eino Milvado. Just focus on that, like Nefesh HaChaim, their great grandfather, taught them. Just focus on Eino Milvado." And they focused, and the Nazis passed them by. And one of the kids, for a moment, lost his focus, and the Nazis started coming close to him. And then he regained his focus, and the Nazis left him behind. So I don't know if the story is true or not true, but it's an interesting story which brings out the idea of how Eino Milvado is the way to transcend all these things like Zugos.
There is more famous story, about a vegan.
About what?
About vegan, how they escaped Warsaw.
Who?
They escaped wars in vegan. Not in a vegan, like vegan. I mean, it was
Train, no?
a,
Oh, there's a different story? About who?
about the Brisker, how he was always thinking all along.
Oh, so it's a variation on the same story.
No,
No?
it's a different story.
But it has to do with Eino Milvado or not?
Yeah, he was much focusing for days.
Uh-huh. Okay, it could be that one version, I don't know which version of the story is the correct version, maybe they're both true, it doesn't matter. But it's the idea, not the details. So the notion of Eino Milvado is the way to transcend all the potential dangers of Zugos. And the really goes back to the pasuk in Chumash, Tamim tiem Hashem Elokecha. If you're completely with God, Tamim, right? Tamim can have two meanings. It can mean completely and it can mean innocently. In other words, that you're like a childlike perspective that God is with you and you're with God and you rely on Him completely, totally, implicitly, and explicitly. So that Tamim tiem Hashem Elokecha is actually the idea of don't pay attention to all the superstitions, don't pay attention to all the potential, demonology. Just be whole with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And I was just looking. There's an ad which appears in the Connections and other places very often about people who Well, it's not perfect. There are people who come and pour lead on your head. Do you know anything about that? It's called Bleigießen. They come and they claim that you have ein horas, and the ein horas are affecting you in a negative way. And the way to remove those ein horas is by pouring lead, seeing how the pattern. Sometimes I think they spill it on your head, and you put a towel on you, obviously, and the lead forms in certain patterns. Sometimes I think they just throw into a pail of cold water, and the lead also forms certain patterns, and that's how you know what ein hora is coming against you, and they take care of it. They remove the ein hora, and so this is what goes completely against the notion of tamim tiyem Hashem Elokecha, being trusting in HaKadosh Baruch Hu and not putting your trust in superstitious things. And in fact, the only source I ever found for Bleigießen, which is called the pouring of lead, is a German superstition from the Middle Ages, not Jewish, German non-Jewish. And they have a ritual. They do this every New Year's Eve to determine what's going to happen during the coming year. So a ritual like that, or a ritual like the red bands people sometimes wear, right? These are all things which go against the whole notion of trusting HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You're trusting in the toy or the band, and that's not going to. A person like that is subject to Zugos, because they're not completely focused on Hashem. They're focusing on the skulos, the gadgets, which will be able to get them out of this potential danger. So that's what Chazal mean when they say man the kapdina may, man the lo kapdina may. The end of the sugya says that those people who are concerned with Zugos, the demons are concerned with him. Those people not concerned with Zugos, the demons are not concerned with him. Why? Because the person is not concerned with Zugos, it means he's focused on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He has an element of Eino Milvado. And such a person transcends the demons and is able to tap into that connection with Hashem, which will take him out of danger. Okay? Any questions so far? Now the question is what demons are. So it's interesting. According to the Pashup shot in the Gemara, there are creatures which are half angelic and half human, and they have the capacity to be invisible. According to other sources, they are the souls of Rishoim who didn't make it into Gehenna. I frequently say that if somebody tells you to go to hell, you should thank them, because it's a tremendous accomplishment to get into hell. Not everybody can get in, because in order to get there, you have to have a feeling of remorse for what you did wrong. That's what Gehenna is, a sense of remorse, shame, and embarrassment. If you don't have that sense of remorse, shame, and embarrassment, you can't get into hell. So that those neshamos which are not there yet, they're floating around, and they take, according to some sources, those are the Shedim. The question is whether what they do, and Chazal seem to say that they eat and procreate and they do all these things like human beings, even though they're semi-angelic as opposed to angels, which don't do these things. On the other hand, there is the Sforno, which is Sforno is a fascinating piece, which is all the more fascinating because he was an Italian Renaissance man. But he writes that the Shedim feast on Tumah. Now, I shouldn't say the Tumah actually is what happens when Shedim feast on a dead body, or some sort of other form of like a discharge, or a splotch, which generates Tumah. Whatever generates Tumah is generated by the presence of Shedim feeding off that. And they feed off these liquids and these secretions and so on and so forth. And he says that they find Jewish bodies more delectable than non-Jewish bodies. So therefore, there's tumah by a Jewish body, but there's no tumah by a non-Jewish body. So the idea, there are many different ideas as to what demons are. The Rambam, when there's a Chazal which says that Adam Rishon during the 130 years he was separate from his wife, he gave birth to Shedim v'Lilin, to male and female demons. So the Rambam says it means people who were coarse, criminal, bad people. It's not referring to actual demons, it's a metaphor. Yeah.
I know there's a Gemara that talks about the Tower of Babel. It says that the upper levels of the tower split into 3 different types of demons, if I'm not mistaken.
Where's this?
I think it might be in Bava Kama. It talks specifically about the Tower of Babel.
It says there are a lot of demons there, but I don't remember the levels. It's a dangerous place.
There was 3 categories at least. Some of them got turned into apes. The other ones got spread into the nations of the world. And the uppermost level got changed to 3 categories of demons. One of them were just purely spiritual. The other ones were the ones that you were saying, half human, half demon. And the other ones were half human, half demon, but they had wings. And I also heard from another person that at the end of days in Gog and Magog, it's going to be the same, at least people and spirits from the Tower of Babel that are going to bring about.
Okay, that's an interesting idea. I don't know much.
At least the Gemara I can definitely source.
Okay, I don't recall such elaborate detail, but there in Bavel there are lots and lots of Shedim. And Talmud Bavli is full of references to Shedim. In Eretz Yisrael, there are very few Shedim. And in Talmud Yerushalmi, there are only like 2 references to Shedim in the whole Shas. And the question is where they made it over with the Mayflower to America. So there are Rebbes who here which people go to tell them how to remodel their houses so they don't anger the demons. Did I speak about this last week about the chimneys?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. So that's so there is this belief that the chimneys are the places where the demons live, and that's why they don't tear down the chimneys. Okay. So on the other hand, we don't have many tales of people seeing demons in Chutz La'aretz. Many more tales about in the Middle East and Europe, but. It's not clear that they're actually present here. So with that in mind, let's take a little bit look at the Gemara. Where are you up to?
You just did we're kind of all in different places.
Is it confused out here?
Yeah.
And I should tell what you said about the Lokpedia,
Mind the copy may mind low copy may. Yeah.
You're looking to find first.
Okay. So the okay. So it's starting with from the Tanur Rabbanan. What does it say on the side here?
Which stuff?
I confused him enough. Whatever, it should say Lo Yishta Trebele. Let's skip that one. Torah Banan Shaisa keeps lying Dama Barosho. The fourth line down. If somebody drinks double, so his blood is on his own head. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amos said when the shub is much lower up in Ashuk, when he didn't go out to the marketplace between cups. Avara up in Ashuk, but he went out to the marketplace. Harashus biyodo, then he can drink too. Now, obviously, the idea is that the 2 is bad because it represents disunity. But you can only have disunity if things are in close proximity. if something is one end of the world, the other end of the world, they don't call them, you don't say it's disunity, they have no connection to each other. But the idea is if you have two cups right after each other, so then they're connected. If you go out to the marketplace in the middle, so then the connection between the cups is severed, goes away. So the Amar Rav Ashi Chazil Reb Chananya Bar Bibi the Kol Kasa have a nofik v'chazei apei shuk, and every cup he drank, he would go out to look in the marketplace. V'lo amar l'tzeis l'derech. There's only true if you're about to go out on a trip. Avo bebeis solo, but not if you're in your own house. So why is that? So Chazal tells us that drachim are a place of sakana. What does it mean drachim are a place of sakana? It means that if you're going to a dangerous road, so then in Shamayim they say, okay, he's confident enough to go on this dangerous road. Must be that he holds that he's sufficient merits, or he's sufficiently righteous that nothing should happen to him. Gemara says that Pesachim about a few blots on Kufay, I believe, where it says that you shouldn't walk, or maybe it's a little bit later. Kufay Aleph. It says that you shouldn't walk under a rickety wall, because you walk on the rickety wall, they're going to judge you in Shamayim. Are you? I think it's somewhere in Kufiyud Beis, but are you worthy of having a nace occur to you, or not worthy of having a nace occur to you? So the same thing is true about drachim. So now, if a person's home, there's no judgment in Shamayim on him, because he's not going to a dangerous place, according to this opinion. If a person goes on the road, so then he has to be concerned that before he went, he did something which indicated disunity and disruption, and maybe there's going to be disunity and disruption between him and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So there are many ways to understand this. One way of understanding it is that the Maisa itself, the deed itself of having things in couples, separates you from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The other, and the one I would favor, is to say that it's the thoughts which might come as a result of drinking 2 cups of the disunity, which will then cause you to have this severance of connection between you and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because you might think of you're drinking that way, and that's going to have a negative effect on you if you go out on the road. Now that makes it much more rational. You don't have to say that. Many people won't say it. Many people say, it's 2 cups. The fact that you have 2 cups of wine in and of themselves, that makes